Dear students of class 10A and 10B, a new lesson, forward block and the INA. I am going to re-explain. In this lesson, only 2 points you have to learn as per the further revised syllabus of the council. These two, points you have to study. Number one, objectives of the forward block. You no need to learn, you no need to study the formation of forward block, you no need to study contributions of Netaji Subhash, no need to study Bose and the Congress, rift with Gandhiji, no need to study. But only you have to study two things. Number one, objectives of the forward block and objectives of the INA. Now, what are the objectives of the forward block? Before discussing about the objectives of the forward block, I would like to explain certain points of the last movement, the Quit India movement, in a very shortest form. During the Quit India movement, the British, forced Indian people to stop revolutionary activities by arresting. A large section of Indian people were arrested in the Quit India, during Quit India movement of 1942. Mahatma Gandhi himself also was arrested, and ultimately the British was able to suppress the Quit India movement. But after the suppression of the Quit India movement, there was no, active movement against the British till the Second World War ended. As soon as the Second World War ended in the year 1945, the British government, under huge pressure of different countries of Europe, especially America, decided to cede power to the Indians. And hence, as I mentioned earlier, the British decided to send one person as the negotiator. He came to India to negotiate, to talk to all party leaders regarding the process of shifting of power to the Indians. But is it right that the Britishers were forced to shift power to the Indians, or they decided to shift power to the Indians under the political pressure of America and other countries of Europe? The fact is, the contributions of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose also is very important, because Netaji started fighting against the British during the national movement from abroad. INA and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose occupied certain certain areas of eastern frontier, reached Assam and raised tricolor flag of India, but ultimately was unable to get achievement, to get success. Why? Because of surrender of Japan in the Second World War. As soon as Japan surrendered, Second World War ended, and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, was unable to make the country free from British control. But under such circumstances, the role of Netaji also is very important. That's why Netaji and his INA is one of the most important phase in Indian history we should discuss. Now I am going to discuss about Netaji's forward block and the INA. Two things we have to keep in our mind. Number one, what are the what are the objectives of the INA? What are the objectives of the forward bloc? Number one, what are the objectives of the forward bloc? There are some objectives of the forward bloc. Number one, reorganization of agriculture and industry on socialist lines. What is the meaning of it? Because industrial growth and development could be possible only when the industry would be large-scale industry, according to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose wanted to make industrial development through a system by which everyone would be provided jobs and there would be no inequality. Each and every person would be paid a satisfactory amount of wages. But it was not possible in small-scale industry. That's why he favored large-scale industry. That's why in his objective he framed, number one, reorganization of industry, reorganization of in agriculture and industry on socialist lines. That means large-scale industry was fruitful to the Indians. Large-scale industry could solve the problems of the Indian people, Indian poor people. And second one, abolition of the zamindari system. And third objective, introduction of a new monetary and credit system where they would be helped with bank loans, they would be helped with financial support. The people, as soon as they would feel financial crisis, they would be helped by that credit system. They would be able to take the help of that credit system and the monetary system, because he favored revolution, armed revolution throughout the country. That's why in his objectives, the objectives of the INA, next point, objectives of the INA. Now objectives of the forward bloc I discussed. Now objectives of the INA. Objectives of the INA. How many objectives of the INA? The INA approved. There are some objectives the INA had approved. These objectives are, I am going to discuss about the objectives of the INA. There are certain objectives the INA had framed. These objectives were to, number one, to organize a provincial government of free India in order to mobilize all the forces effectively to fight against the British and to make it clear that they would fight for the sake of country's freedom and liberty. That's why he motivated he motivated the soldiers of the INA. And next one, total mobilization of Indian manpower and money for a total war. He wanted to make a total war so that the British was forced to shift power to the Indians. The Britishers were forced to surrender before the INA. And next one, the motto of the INA. The motto of the INA was unity, sacrifice and faith. Unity, sacrifice and faith. It is the motto of the INA. And next one, to organize an armed revolution throughout the country, to organize an armed revolution against the British, to fight the British army with modern arms. That's why he went to abroad and took help from foreign countries and formed that INA, motivated the soldiers of the INA to fight against the British to make the country free from British control. And next one, it was not possible for the Indians to organize an armed revolution while staying at our country, in our country. That's why it should be better for them to go to abroad and utilize the manpower of abroad, particularly on Indian living in East Asia. And while living there, while staying there, they would have to collect, they would have to make sure the help and military support of foreign countries for a total war. So these are the objectives of the INA, my dear students. You have to study. And another thing you have to study, that is next point, our next topic, independence and partition of India. Independence and partition of India. This lesson, forward block and INA is a very short lesson, Only there are two subheadings given by the council. We have to teach it, we have to learn it, and we have to teach it. Now I taught it. Now next one, our next topic, I am going to discuss about the partition of India. The partition. Next topic, independence and partition of India. 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 This is the most important lesson because there are so many points you have to understand very carefully. Number one, but you have to study this lesson as per the further revised syllabus of the council. Now, first and foremost point you have to study from Mountbatten Plan onwards. Mountbatten Plan. Mountbatten put his plan for the partition of India before the big seven leaders. Who are the big seven leaders? Nehru, Patel, Acharya Kripalani, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Liaquat Ali, Nisar Ali, Baldev Singh. They are the seven leaders, seven big leaders. The Congress accepted the partition plan. The Congress accepted the Mountbatten plan because of Jinnah and his, Jinnah and his strong stand for the formation of a new state for the Muslim people, Pakistan. And it was due to that reason the plan was announced on June 3rd, 1947. On the very day, on hearing the news of division of our country India to be two halves, one half for the Hindus, one half for the Muslims, Gandhiji said, I repeat that. Gandhiji said, quote, I repeat that the division of India can only do harm to the country's future, unquote, full stop. So this is Gandhiji who attracted the people of India to be united at the 11th hour also on the question of an undivided country, an undivided India. But he was unable to manage the aggressiveness of Muhammad Ali Jinnah because he did not want to make any compromise on the question of making a separate country, Pakistan, because he favored He wanted to make a separate country for the Muslim people, Pakistan. That's why Gandhiji was unable to manage, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Now there are certain points of the Mountbatten Plan. Partition means country would be divided into two dominions, Pakistan and India. And second one, relationship between the two dominions. What should be the relationship between the two dominions? I am going to discuss about it. Mountbatten Plan. Mountbatten had certain, points. Mountbatten had made certain points in regard to his plan. These points are: number one, partition. India would be divided into two dominions. In two dominions, India and Pakistan. And second point, relations between the two new dominions. It was for the two dominions to decide what relations they would have with the British Commonwealth and with each other. That would be dependent on themselves. They would negotiate. They would talk to each other, talk to themselves regarding the question of establishing relationship with British Commonwealth and other and with them. And a boundary commission also would be established for the creation in order to settle the boundaries of the dominions in case of partition was decided upon. And next one, the princely states. The princely state who sacrificed their lives, who also played an important role in support of the British during the national movement. As regards the princely states, the treaties with them would come to an end. They gave special distinction to the princely states by mentioning it that after making the country free, after providing independence for country India, the princely states would be free from British control, and whatever treaties were made with the princely states would become null and void. This would be free to associate themselves with either of the dominions or remain independent. And next one, Bengal and Punjab. Partition of Bengal and partition of Punjab was proposed. The partition of Bengal and Punjab was proposed provided that legislative assemblies of the two provinces decided in favor of partition. That means the two states, Punjab and Bengal, both of them would decide in consultation with the members of the legislative assemblies whether they favor the partition, whether they required any partition in Bengal and partition in Punjab for the Muslims. And now the legislative assembly of Sindh was to take its own decision at a special meeting. Sindh was given special importance, and it was decided that the legislative assembly of Sindh would have to take her own decision at a special meeting. The meeting would be held only for the Muslims of Sindh. They would take decision. What decision they were going to take? And Northwest Frontier Province. Another points of the Mountbatten Plan. A meeting was to be held in the Northwest Frontier Province to ascertain whether the people wanted to join India and Pakistan. And that meeting would solve all the problems. Whether they would join whether they would join Pakistan or whether they would join India, that would be decided by them. A group of people where distinguished people and educated persons would be there, to find out solution to whom they would, where they would join India or Pakistan. Now, district of Sylhet, the Muslim majority district of Sylhet was to decide by referendum whether it would join East Bengal or whether it would join or refrain in Assam. That means the parts of Sylhet, the people, since Sylhet was a Muslim majority province, it would be decided by the people of Sylhet whether they would join East Bengal or parts of Assam, means East Bengal, West Bengal, parts of East Bengal or West Bengal, because that time Assam was included in the West Bengal. Anyway, now Constituent Assembly, the existing Constituent Assembly would continue to work, but the constitution framed by it would not apply to Pakistan. A separate constituent assembly would be constituted for those parts of India which decided in favor of partition. That means partition was inevitable for both the two countries, for both the two communities of India, Hindus and Muslims. But the Hindus realized that they must have their own constitution. But the Muslims of Pakistan, they did not raise any proposal in favor of any constitution. But the Hindus raised hue and cry, and Britishers wanted to make them agree for framing any constitution. But the Muslims remained silent. The British proposed that one constitution would be framed in regard to one constitution would be framed both for the Hindus and Muslims, and as soon as whenever the two separate states would be formed in the name of India and Pakistan, then they would decide whether the Muslim would have any separate constitution for their country. But the constitution which would be framed by the people of India right now, that would be followed by the Hindu majority country India, or Indian people would consider that constitution to be the constitution of India. But the rest of the people who form Muslim country, for Muslim country Pakistan, they would later decide whether they would require any constitution for their country. And next one, transfer of power. The plan ended with a declaration that the transfer of power would take place not in June 1948, but much earlier than that. The British Parliament would pass an act for the transfer of power before August 15, 1947. There was a huge pressure on British Parliament by the members of Parliament. That's why the British Parliament had been eagerly waiting to pass an act for shifting power to the Indians. That's why ultimately the British Parliament passed an act for the transfer of power before 15th August 1947, and then ultimately it became possible by the British to shift power to the Indians, and India became a free country by 15th August 1947. Up to this, my dear students, thank you.